Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, August 7th. I guess we'll just go into the accountability section right at the beginning, considering how I'm still just playing Shadowverse both as my pre-recorded footage and as the streaming footage. I grinded out all of this crossover quest events for Code Geass by just beating Cornelia many times, and that got me 1600 points, which then rewarded me with everything, including a Seer's Globe, which it seems like the Seer's Globe to make animated cards out of unanimated cards is probably the most premium reward they're willing to give, which kind of sucks because you know there is premium currency they could be giving, and they definitely aren't willing to do that. A Rebellion Cup has started, and we'll have to deal with that. In about 5 hours, the daily quest will reset, and the way this daily mission works is that apparently your progress never resets regardless of how many days you don't accomplish it. So I am basically getting this done once a week at best. And I'm still not 100% sure where we are with the score thing, whether I can always score a few rewards each month, or if you have to just get better and better each month to get a reward. As for the main story, I've finished chapter 7, so now there's chapter 8 that is probably an hour and a half, and chapter 9 that's probably an hour and a half, and then there is definitely question as to, after I finish chapter 9, does this advertisement here, new story chapter 9 through 14, unlock potentially a ton more story, or is this an advertisement for more chapters coming out, or is this an advertisement that actually that was episode 9, and episode 9 is missing subchapters? There's definitely a naming problem there. First things first, I need to build a Havencraft deck because I need to play Arena. So, Havencraft would be this character, Skin. We're still very much in the position where there's not a lot of cards, like 12 pages of 6 in rotation. I don't know how to really fix that particularly well either. As Suki Hamon. That's a high level card, so it probably is useful. Here we have a very expensive card that doesn't start with much of a attack. And let's see. Then these Pure Shot Angels are fairly well. I don't know why we're getting a sound effect. This would be a healing card for 7, but restoring 5 for characters is actually very unlikely to ever need. Let's see. That might work. This might do something. The thing I think that is mostly going to come around from this idea and a Havencraft deck is we either are going to have to banish a lot of creatures and overwhelm by banishing and healing, or we're going to have to cause some other kind of way of winning, and I just don't think I have the cards for this. There probably is a card that would do 1 damage to the enemy for every 1 damage that you heal for yourself. But the whole system, like, compared to like Magic the Gathering's deck building system, there's less of the ability to drag and drop things. There's less of the ability to less of an ability to try and figure out what the cards are that you have here. Kind of a very small screen when you click on it. So I think there's room here for certain to have a rejiggering of the interface. Now, in all fairness, this interface might work perfectly well for, it might be designed for cell phones, and that explains why there's just 2 rows, whereas Magic the Gathering's deck building screens totally wouldn't work for cell phones. So in the end, we may see Magic the Gathering Arena's interface actually look more like this than the other way around. Let's see. I'm still not really certain how many cards are Natura cards and how many aren't. See, I have like 12 copies of this card, so 10 was not the maximum. But the fact that you also have like 40 cards also comes into play. Because I'm gonna have to come back and think about which cards do I want multiple copies of. Right now I'm just putting 1 of each card. And these Natarian Great Trees seem to be overpowered concept. It does seem to just get played regardless of what class you're playing fairly often. Can also kind of see that over half of the pages here are very low level creatures. What's Lorena's Holy Water? See, draw a card. I kind of have played some decks where I feel like there might very well be a strategy to just pull as many cards out of your deck as possible, which is a weird thought, certainly. How Dogma. Adamantium Bird. See, that's actually the Code Geass version of that card, so I probably don't want that. 12 copies of that card. We are approaching a point where I should start to think about getting rid of all the duplicates and turning it into vials. Not that it's really going to give me a lot of vials. See, this is probably the real choice here, is to play as many copies of this card as possible and then play a whole bunch of amulets around that, instead of trying to play around the strategy of healing yourself, because I don't think I have that card that would actually do damage if you heal yourself. He has an incantation card, which I think he should probably always have something like that. Almost every hero class has a card similar to this that gives you in nature a great tree. So it kind of feels like when these cards were introduced, whatever expansion these kind of cards were added to, this is when they started to double down on making sure that each hero class was balanced, which is probably a statement that the original couple years of this game had some balance issues. Probably not more than most collectible card games though, so I probably wouldn't be too upset with the experience had I been playing it at that time. Let's see. So I pretty well boned this up. The right thing would be to really start over, but I'm not willing to spend that extra time, so that's a Havencraft deck build, and a great example of why I really don't have enough cards or understanding of the game to be doing deck builds. I should have a free ticket entry. Like, I thought it was you get one free entry per day, but maybe the day has not rotated over. Yeah, okay, so we're not even at that point yet. Which I guess then makes us be in a nice position to come over here in Unlimited. And since that wasn't an unlimited deck that I built, I guess I can't play it. So I'll just play default Havencraft. And we'll try and learn some things while we play Unlimited. Meanwhile, we'll just try and burn through the video game news. It definitely feels like a lot of the expansions and a lot of the cards tell their own backstory that has nothing to do with the main story events, and probably won't ever have anything to do with the main story events. It does kind of feel like they intentionally have shopped out the writing of the main story to some third-party company, which is frankly crazy by the sound of it. Sounds like a really silly idea. It's silly that they have a main story in the first place, particularly when you know you're going to spend, oh gosh, it feels like it's been 60 hours going through this main story for really no reason. So yeah, I just don't really follow their logic when you consider that Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering Arena basically have no story. So for both of them have like a tutorial setup when you first start an account where you have to play a few games, like maybe 10 or 20 games. Yu-Gi-Oh! Also has a similar kind of setup. Yu-Gi-Oh! I'd argue does try to have a bit of a story, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Story is kind of ingenious in the fact that the story in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime and in the Yu-Gi-Oh world is it's just a bunch of ridiculous characters that are obsessed with playing Yu-Gi-Oh, so it ties in very well, whereas the main story of Shadowverse is the leaders fighting each other, or well, at least finally in chapter 6 they're not fighting each other, but fighting random people in actual physical swordplay and combat. And then that swordplay and combat is represented through a card game, which is definitely narrative breaking.
I better get a bonus for this. My king. My king.
Wait, that's it?
Okay, what do we want to do?
Light upon the land. My blade is your
Evolve
salvation.
here and see if we can
Luminescence,
turn this around.
shining hope. This wasn't worth it.
I look forward to the point where I can
Light upon the land.
can start playing a different game, because this is frankly annoying. I could get 6 refilled here to banish that guy, or I can play something.
Shining hope.
There we go. So yeah, I also have only about 24 hours left of space on my hard drive after cleaning up space, so at a certain point I'm gonna have to
My lord.
start uploading these videos, and labeling these videos are questionable, certainly, because I don't know really how I want to label the main story of Shadowverse. I don't know if I inherently want to suggest that everybody needs to follow my long journey of just watching the main story and criticizing it. There's a decent amount of time for me, not for an average video game critic, because certainly we've seen lots of video game critics that simply sit in silence for 20 minutes straight as the cutscenes and things play, or they will throw out the occasional "that's cool, so awesome, type ideas.
Come out wherever
Nothing
you are.
substantive. But there definitely have been points where maybe I've let it go up to 2 minutes where I'm just sitting there actually paying attention and actually listening to what's being said. Which is definitely different. It's definitely not something that I typically do.
Show your might.
And it's definitely weird to be effectively criticizing a visual novel, which is basically all the main story boils down to, if you're not playing the card game also, and I'm not playing the card game also, so
Come out wherever
yeah,
you
I
are.
definitely did not plan after playing 999 to accidentally end up playing another visual novel. In all fairness, I did not plan to move to Shadowverse either, and was forced into it.
That impels me.
I guess I can attest that Shadowverse has not emailed me with any problems, and I've been playing Shadowverse pretty much the same way I was playing Magic the Gathering Arena, which was pretty much the same way I was playing Hearthstone. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say as far as the catch-up. And we should just, I suppose, move into the news and burn out the news and be done. We are just, the whole world is in a very slowed down lockdown position where not a lot is happening from day to day. So that there's no surprise that there isn't a lot to talk about. And I suppose slowly I'll just adjust to that. I almost bought the Fallout 3 Game of the Year edition. It's on sale right now, but actually I went and double checked using one of the plugins I have to, I think, Enhance Steam probably is the plugin that tells the historic low price of that game, and actually it's been like $5 cheaper, so.
A dazzling victory awaits.
But that is a great example of how I've lucked out on having like $9 in my Steam wallet, and now I'm itching to spend it on something if it's reasonable and viable. Like, there definitely are things like the Game of the Year edition of Fallout 3 that I want to own. I'm not sure I even 100% want to guarantee that I would play it, but it's something I still would want in the backlog as an option. Although, if you take a step back and really think about it, I'm not sure that there's really a good reason to play any of the Fallout games.
How much is in it for me?
If you're gonna just move forward and think, well, think from the perspective of the Fallout series has kind of been abused and run into the ground, and the Elder Scrolls series has been neglected, and the only thing keeping it alive, or that ever kept it alive, was its very, very loyal fan base. I mean, we probably are at the point where this loyalty should be abandoned and people should move on to Cyberpunk, and that would just be great for a whole new generation to say, hey, Cyberpunk is the new Fallout, Cyberpunk is the new Elder Scrolls, everybody should play Cyberpunk. And then there'll be a Cyberpunk 2 and 3, and then in about 10 years there'll be a new game either from CD Projekt Red or a different company that replaces Cyberpunk. Of course, you could kind of make the same argument for Halo, and I guess that is kind of somewhat the truth, is that Halo hasn't succeeded in being consistently popular forever. It was super popular, and then it eventually got replaced by a bunch of Call of Duty and similar first-person shooter games. Let's see. We have Ward. We have 2 banishings. I can restore 5 next turn. I can play a 5/4 this turn and evolve.
How much is in it for me? My blade is your salvation. I'd better get a bonus for this.
Oh, Serpent King.
Probably should have played that.
I earned my fair share.
I suppose I should mention in the main story there's a cat girl character called Ladica, Ladica, which they pronounce Ladica, which would be the Japanese way of pronouncing it. Two letters per sound usually is how they do that. And she is oddly this kind of like gropey / sexually aggressive lesbian type character that wants to hold the hand of all of the female characters in the story, and dangerously gets to the point of making an argument that she's spreading the gay, she's spreading the lesbianism to Orisa and Erica and Eris. And so that characterization doesn't particularly play well in the current climate, although I don't think too many SJWs are gonna be playing the main story content of Shadowverse anyways. And she doesn't do anything like super inappropriate, and if you don't look at it from kind of a pervy male gaze perspective, which I'll fully admit I tend to look from that perspective, it could be just that the cat girl, the anthropomorphic cat girl, is just super friendly. But then they also have her written so that she speaks in a very weird style that that is kind of like a Valley Girl style of talking, which comes off as weird. Let's see. This, and then what does this one do? This, and then this, and then this, I guess.
I will save you no matter the cost.
Go ahead and attack there. Go ahead and attack there. So I kind of like Latika in her characterization, but then I hate her in her voice writing and her just dialogue, and they give a lot of weird dialogue choices or accent choices to a lot of characters in the main story, like voice actors, at least the English voice actors, apparently being told to play voices from all around the world. So you'll have like Irish accents, and then you'll have California Valley Girl accents in the same world, and then you'll have some that try to talk like robots in weird ways that doesn't really make as much sense as it should. So it's weird, certainly, and I don't know if it's necessary. In the same chapter, same episode of the main story, they introduce a cat general called Meowskers, which you kind of feel like he was going to be the comedic character that everybody was just going to say is cute and pet, and he was getting upset that people were petting him like a regular cat. But there we go. I guess with enough strategy here, you can play a lot of amulets and maintain your health. But Mouskers, as a character in the same chapter, fails to really be written that way. If anything, all the characters kind of... It would be alright if they had set a pattern where characters show up, you fight them once, and that's it, and then you really don't get a lot of backstory for them. But instead, they introduce characters, they show them 4 or 5 times, and you still don't get a lot of backstory for them. And it doesn't feel like they're just intentionally trying to cycle in more art from the card characters. Which, honestly, they could have just done that, frankly. Even though the main story is animated differently than these cards, because these cards have background art and these are just stationary images, I think you could probably cheated this one way or another to show off the cards more in the main story, which they really are failing to do. Like, we still don't know who this fighter is, if he's supposed to be a Blade Right or not. He looks like a Blade Right, but that's about it. We also don't know who the Snake Priestess is from the main story, or Curate, or any of these other characters.
Oh, Serpent King.
So you have this kind of like distinct background issue where cards have their own backstory that are just, I guess you'd have to write fan fiction to figure out, to decide what the backstory really was.
I live by the sword.
No disruptions.
You wouldn't.
And while the most recent main story does improve itself somewhat by not repeating a beginning and end chapter, previous episodes had like a single chapter that all 8 of the leaders had to sit through and watch 8 times. The player had to sit through and watch at the beginning, and at the end there's a wrap-up chapter that you would have had to sit through 8 times. They got rid of that, but then they turned around and they had a lot of flashbacks to things that happened just a minute previous, which definitely, again, feeds to the idea that this was a third-party company that was contracted to write a certain number of words, and they lazied out big time and simply repeated the same words in flashbacks. The whole thing really falls apart, and I would like to see, if somebody wanted to put some story in their game, I'd like to see somebody really commit to just doing direct to video or direct to YouTube 5-minute animations instead. And that's what Destiny Child kind of tried to do, although they kind of gave up on it too, so probably was too expensive and then didn't pay for itself as well as it should have. Speaking of Destiny Child, the next event is happening, and I think in installing the uncensored patch, I may have installed a modded patch, because the latest character literally is like is basically naked. So, but then the previous character in the previous expansion was basically naked too. So I don't know if perhaps in the original Korean or Japanese version, this is where they started to go really far off the rails with the lewd outfits. But yeah, it's a fairly shocking expansion, to a point where Destiny Child may have at one point a year ago been acceptable to let a 14-year-old look at. At this point, it's like maybe a 17 or 18-year-old would be acceptable to play the game and look at it. As for the actual adult game I'm playing, College Life, that's still going, but I am approaching the end on that one. It's fairly obvious that there isn't going to be much more content, and it doesn't seem like they add enough content fast enough for people that would actually play the game. And I think that is kind of the problem with the Nutaku games in general, is that they are designed to be more of a whale gathering mission, as it were, for free-to-play games. They want to get people to try it for 10 to 20 minutes, potentially spend a lot of premium currency to get into the game, and then they really don't care if you burn out after 6 weeks or 4 weeks of playing the game. Which that might be the right way to market adult content games, but it definitely not gonna treat the customer particularly well.
The order will remain. So this is my end.
How much is in it for me?
Like,
My allies, my friends.
Lovely day for a fight.
Light upon the land.
well, let's see. We have a game on Steam called Mars with periods in between each of it. It looks like it might be a mecha game, or it might be an asset flip game. It's not out yet, so I don't know why I was shown it. It's gonna be English only with a third-party account, and it's gonna be an MMO. So okay. I don't know any of these developers or publishers either, so there's nothing really to say around that.
Save these pitiful lambs.
So we do this,
Iron my
and
fair
this,
share.
My lord.
and that.
You wouldn't.
Light upon the land.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Borrel Blade from Frozen Byte, which I recognize that name. It's tagged as a multiplayer game. Also, looks like it is a sword and shield fighting game, which I still have yet to see a well-programmed sword and shield game that people actually want to play. And Gearbox has a game like this that they put out a 12-minute demo during the most recent State of Play. So it's going to have a bunch of languages supported. Apparently it's a planned release of 2020, which at this point saying anything's coming out in 2020 is unbelievable, to say the least.
Open your eyes.
I guess at this point you just would want to leave everything where it is.
Have faith.
Like, it does seem like
Now.
maybe we've run into a point
Victory in
where
sight.
some of these
The Lord wills it.
some of these games are that were Sword and Shields based around that Sword and Shield game by Ubisoft. Maybe these are the clones that are finally coming out, or who knows. Or people think that that's actually gonna succeed, and I don't see any reason why that would succeed though. Like, I don't think there has ever been a point in the history of video games where swordplay has really worked. I would think if you were gonna have swordplay, you probably need something like
What was that?
the Sands of Time as a gimmick to rewind when you take damage or make a mistake.
How much is in it for me?
Speaking of mistakes, here we have a game called Explore Girl Rope Spirit, which about a year ago we saw a game where you tied up girls in shibari type Japanese artistic bondage and exercised them. This clearly is targeting a fetish. Here you have a schoolgirl outfit, so once again that gets into Steam's rules. And you see the main focus here is to just have different kinds of tying up. It's not even really shibari in this case, because they're not even really doing anything more than trying to restrain her. And it seems like the whole game is you can do this to this asset flipped 3D model, but then the actual game occurs when she's free and she's fighting random NPC characters. And you can tell this is just kind of like ridiculous fetish bait for $4.99 English and Chinese. So I assume you would put that.
This is not the end.
I assume what you take from that is that it is a low effort Chinese game. You don't see a ton of that, although you may see scenes of bondage in more of the visual novels and adult games that you don't see a game trying to sell itself completely around that idea. And yeah, it doesn't happen a lot. Speaking of Valve's accusations of censorship that they seem to kind of awkwardly step forward and step backwards into whether or not they are actually implementing it or not, it does seem like there are at least a few people that are in charge of approving or disallowing games on Steam that seem to have personal vendettas against adult content, particularly anime style adult content. And I guess it is worth mentioning that this Chinese game Explorer Girl Rope Spirit is not the anime style, which might arguably explain why it was allowed on, even though it's so obviously a low effort garbage game. But they've never curated for quality, so they're very consistent on that as far as letting low effort garbage games on their storefront. But a couple of days ago, maybe a week or two ago, Manga Gamer came out and complained that their game Boken Why I Became an Angel, I believe is the name of it, was removed unfairly and due to claims of the Steam code, the thing on the Steam server having adult content, versus Manga Gamer saying that there is no adult content in the Steam code. People have to go and download an actual patch that has actually all that animation and voice data and all of that in to add the adult content back into it, so there was. And that's kind of what Manga Gamer has been doing consistently, is they've been promoting and pushing people to go to their website and get the adult patch if they want the adult patch. And in general, I imagine once you get to the website, they're promoting and pushing people to just buy the games directly cheaper from their website instead of from Steam, and they're trying to use Steam as just the advertising portal to their own personal website, which in all fairness is not a inherently bad business model and idea.
No disruptions.
However, now the follow-up to the story, and this is like the second or third time Manga Gamer's games have been specifically disallowed on Steam. Manga Gamer has come back with a tail between their legs and said, "Oh, actually, even though we're going to stick with the statement that we were inaccurately removed from Steam, we did, in talking with Steam, find that there was something inappropriate that we have now removed, and now Boken Why I Became an Angel is back on Steam." So that is an interesting follow-up, certainly, and it does kind of give more towards the idea that maybe it's more Manga Gamer just attempting to stir up controversy than Valve actually attempting to censor. We have not really had a large, consistent list of people complaining that their games have been removed from Valve lately. And I think probably some of that is because I think Valve probably very much straight up tells them in the application process, early in the process, that no, we won't have any game that has the hyper young moe anatomically incorrect characters if the game even has the whiff of looking or seeming like it's going to be an adult content game. If anything, I would say Valve probably doesn't even allow games that are 100% not adult games to have hyper young moe anime characters. Because yeah, I have not seen anything like that in at least a year, and the one game I'm thinking about was actually kicked off of Valve. And then of course you also have, in that case, the problem that I think the animator for that game also had been known for using the same animation style
I'd better get a bonus for this.
to
I earned
do
my fair share.
adult magazines in Japan, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was a case of people putting up pictures from his magazines and thinking or
Wasn't worth it.
wrongfully attributing that to what was actually in the game.
This wasn't
But you certainly get into a dangerous precedent if you're banning out outright an entire art style.
I live by the sword.
But yeah, Valve is inconsistent, to say the least. But they're not getting raked over the coals. And in all fairness, right now, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of all these cancellations, in the middle of all these Me Too, in the middle of every other little controversy that's going on, it's very understandable that there isn't a lot of energy or oxygen in the room for people who are free speech advocates to get upset and start protesting. So it's not surprising that hasn't been really mentioned. Also, SJWs at this point have completely given up on any pretense of believing in free speech, and they are totally pro censorship at this point. Where I feel like liberals in the past, not SJWs who are the extreme and like fringe break off of liberals, I feel like liberals in the past at some point were about free speech.
This is not the end.
And maybe that just swings one direction versus the other once one side has enough power. Speaking of deplatforming, it seems like BitChute is now being warned away from on Twitter. So if people, that's the rumor I'm seeing, at least, as people were sharing their BitChute videos, which I do have a BitChute account, and on a rare occasion it gets some views, and it's super easy for me since it's all automated. So I'm happy for that. Although I don't think I'm getting any like major views or any kind of financial incentive there. It would be weird if it turned out that I had several like Bitcoins worth of currency. Although at this point, even having one whole Bitcoin is probably worth about $2,000, last I heard. I could be totally wrong about that now. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Captain Clive Danger from Dione, which looks like a blocky Roblox type clone first person shooter asset flip game for $8.99, English only. Let's see if I can find this other game. Boken. Why? Angel. Let's see if I can find that game.
I live by the sword.
It's probably not Boken.
How much is in it for me?
Wait, that's it?
There it is. Took a while. Let me just make sure it's YouTube family friendly, and it is. Excuse me. And once you change the hero, you have to remember how you're supposed to actually play this game.
Hey, let's play.
So here's the game that was temporarily released. Bo-Katan: Why I Became an Angel. You can see this is really not super outside the scales of the Moe standard here. You have anime girls that don't look realistic and anatomically correct, certainly, in the fact that they're super short. And they all are in kind of like a private school outfits. That so if the rule really was schoolgirl outfits, they've missed that part. There's another like school outfit indication. It is just a visual novel tagged with sexual content. So the only thing I could think is that maybe there was some sound file or a single image or a single frame that Manga Gamer left in it, unless there was actually quite a lot left in it and Manga Gamer's just being kind of hyperbolic. I can say though it's rated positively, and this does look animated well enough. It's on the following list for a reason. It's priced at a reasonable price for a visual novel game. But it does seem like this publisher in particular is the one that is running into more trouble with Valve and Steam more than anything. Perhaps that is because they are a major publisher, and you can see they have quite a lot of games here, and quite a lot of them are visual novel adult games. So they may just be running into the problem more often, or they may also just have a larger Twitter feed than most. Whereas if you are a low effort game developer trying to put an adult game on Steam, maybe nobody follows you on Twitter, and thus you can't complain as loudly. That certainly has occurred to me, as if I really needed to complain about something on Twitter, I'm not sure I'd have enough followers to actually have any impact. I'm not sure anybody nowadays, except for major celebrities, have enough followers.
Wait, that's it?
There was a brief point where people would actually respond, but now they kind of don't. Well, a lot of them don't.
Don't hurt me.
Light upon the land.
You're done for.
Luminescence.
Just gonna go ahead and end the turn here. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Smelted Kin, which looks a little dark screenshotty. It looks like you're doing a Contra style game, but it's just a little too dark in the screenshots for me to give it the time of day. It's $5.59. They're comparing it to Owlboy, which I didn't particularly like that game. Yeah, more and more I run into games that were kind of well reviewed by mainstream critics, and then I play them and I'm like, this is alright, or oh, the controls are pretty terrible on this. I really need to find a way to push myself over the cliff to stop listening completely to mainstream video game journalists, because their opinions aren't like 100% wrong, nor are they 100% right. They're just weirdly all over the place, and so I'm not sure that there actually is anything I can pull from a video game journalist's opinions.
My
Like,
lord.
and like the most recent Bombcast had yet another like celebrity person on the stream, which makes me wonder, are they testing out new employees to replace old employees who are
Better than in the cradle.
on the verge of being replaced? Which I don't even know how I would feel about that, frankly, considering
How much is in it for me?
I kind of don't like the old employees either, so at some point you need to get off the train. And that's one of the things that makes it feel so weird with the idea of G4 coming back, is that it's, to me, it feels like picking up your old heroin addiction. Feels like you're not growing as a human being if I were to go back and get obsessed with G4. But in all fairness, I probably would get pretty obsessed with G4 if they can do like anything of even small interest. And I wouldn't really have a problem watching Attack of the Show, because Attack of the Show in particular may just be like a replacement for something like Reddit, which Reddit has its own problems and wouldn't be a lot really too much about video games. But X-Play, like what I would expect from X-Play is not what X-Play offered in the past, in the sense that X-Play in the past was almost certainly just advertisement for new games. And now what I would expect from them is hypercritical. We're not paid off, we're not bought off by any company. Instead we're sponsored by like Toyota or some unrelated industry. But like you kind of would want to see Patreon support for something like X-Play, something where all of their funding, and I mean all of it, is coming from viewers, and thus they can have full editorial freedom. But then there also is some questions, I guess, that I would have to go back and check, as far as just how many of the reviews that happened on X-Play are reviews that I would really agree with, because they were like on a 5-point scale, and a lot of times they were giving 4 out of 5s to a lot of games. So yeah, with the idea of X-Play coming back, it would be incredibly helpful to go back and look at what did they give like Call of Duty 1, if they were even around to review Call of Duty 1. Is that in line with what other people have reviewed that game, or what other people at the time reviewed that game as? Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Skullhead World, which clearly is just a weird top-down twin-stick shooter with pixel graphics. Maybe you're on a 3D world, which changes things a little bit, but not enough to overcome the weirdness here. Like, the idea that everything is a skull is pretty insane. $13.99 is also really expensive for this English only game.
Who's this? You're too strong.
We certainly have quite a lot of garbage stuff happening.
I did it! I won!
Apparently we have daily missions now. Now we just have another daily mission. So this is where it would really help, is if in the next 4 hours, whether on screen or off screen, if I could get another 3 victories for more temporary gems, that'd be great. I don't know if there's perhaps a backlog of the number of daily missions and I'll just constantly get more daily missions, or if there is a case that if I got 3 more victories, I would then have to wait to wait until the reset. And the daily reset for this game is not like a Western time by any means. It's clearly something around midnight Japanese standard time, or something like that, because it happens fairly oddly. Next, we have a real game that came out on Steam, Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition. There is a problem with it that I've heard, and that is performance. We're seeing some mixed reviews here for $49.99, so it desperately needs a patch, which there really is no excuse for them to release it if they weren't like able to optimize it first. Like there really is no rush to release it right now, particularly in the middle of nobody having any money. So game looks great, but it's crashing at the first 5 minutes of actual gameplay. I can't get past the first room. Game constantly crashing. Manual saves mean you lose massive progress. Can't recommend until fixed. Lots of performance issues. Let's see. At this state, the game is unplayable for me. Terrible stability for a PC port. 12 crashes in 2.5 hours. And yeah, I was wondering if perhaps my RTX 2080 would not have any trouble with it, but I suspect it probably would still have trouble. Like, they want a 780, they recommend a 1060, they want an i7 4770K, they minimum recommend an i5 2500K. I'm not sure my CPU is a K version at all. They want 16 gigabytes of RAM, but they'll work on 8 gigabytes of RAM. And it's DirectX 12, which that might be part of the problem too. So what could I really say other than this? Now would be the time for a game like Horizon Zero Dawn to really have blown it out of the water. Dia Foundry, I believe is the name of the YouTube channel, was recommending people play it on medium settings, which is effectively playing the game exactly with the same graphic settings as the PS4 Pro. And apparently there's something in his setup where his graphics card in the PC he was testing in was only using 8 PCI lanes instead of 16 PCI lanes, and so he moved the graphics card around, and this is like the first time he has ever even found that it was installed in the wrong place in the first place. That is kind of my concern about the fact that I have my old graphics card still plugged in to my computer, is that I'm not sure it isn't just wasting bandwidth. It may be helping, it may be hurting, I'm not sure.
Take that!
No!
Too slow.
Stop!
Does this do anything?
Too slow.
So this one will draw a card. I don't have this card, unfortunately. So yeah, there's really no reason to drop the ball like this, because you could have delayed it. Plenty of other games have delayed it. This is a great example of what happens when you don't delay a game. By all rights, it seems like there is not going to be a lot of people buying new consoles. To the point that the most recent state of play for PlayStation really was selling every single game that's coming out for the PlayStation 4 instead of the PlayStation 5, which makes me kind of wonder if they haven't secretly in the background delayed the PlayStation 5 release already.
Wait, that's it?
Or kind of secretly like delayed it. Maybe it will actually release, but there will be considerably few games that actually require.
You are done for. Luminescence.
What does this one do?
Too slow.
Nothing.
Keep working toward a brighter future. Shining hope.
Too slow. Should have been quicker.
Shining
Oops.
hope.
I did that wrong. Did that very wrong. We can also see on Steam this is the first game that Guerrilla Games has put on Steam. So as this might be the first game that Guerrilla has listed on PC in general, so but that really should have given them more time. It's not the first PlayStation published game on Steam though, although everything else that's been published by PlayStation has been a fairly B tier or less game. We really just don't have an idea. That's kind of the problem here, is that we really just don't have an idea of where Valve and PlayStation's relationship is going to end up, or where PlayStation is going in general. I don't think they have an idea as far as what they're going to do. And they're just trying different things. What putting out a game, a bad PC port, doesn't do, I can definitely attest to this, is it doesn't convince PC gamers that PC gaming is awful and that there's all kinds of compatibility programs and that PC games don't run as well as a console game. There is a certain percentage of people that will take that perspective, but that really is the small percentage of people that tried to be PC gamers while not really having knowledge of how to build, upgrade, and maintain their own computer, or people that have just hated Windows, which in all fairness I can understand hating Windows 10, but it's not really that bad. Oops.
Raise your blade.
Let's see.
It won't be long now.
I shall overcome all by the Knight's Code.
That.
Take that.
Salvation Circus malfunction.
No one gets past me.
And that.
This is our
And
way
that.
out.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Dungeon and Derision, which, as a game that might be a Dungeons and Dragons parody, that's a good name. Unfortunately, all the graphics look terrible, and it doesn't look like there's anything fun to do here as far as the gameplay loop. This is English only. It does look like it is just kind of a terrible top-down RPG clone. I don't know why you'd even try to make an RPG Maker game, or in that case an RPG game that's not even as good as an RPG Maker, when you should be able to do enough market research to say, hey, you know Final Fantasy is an RPG, you know Atelier Ryza is an RPG, you know that there's hundreds of JRPGs out there that look 100 times better than anything you could do. Alright. I can save myself a hit,
Dead men tell no tales.
or I can do this
This is our way out.
and this. Then we've got an ambush for one, or one short, which I guess means unless he plays something with ward, he can attack me and he could maybe kill one of these guys. but that's about it. Gamatsu has an article here. Anno Mutanium launches in December for PS4, also coming to PC. This is part of the PlayStation China Hero project. I suppose it is worth mentioning also that I haven't heard of this game. Let's watch the trailer somewhat. President Trump of the United States, if that needs to be said, has, through I think executive order, I haven't really gotten down to the core of it, kind of stopped payments to Tencent and I don't think NetEase, but definitely Tencent, which, yeah, we'll have to see what that really does, because almost certainly that just boils down into a court case fight and China being upset with the United States. It would be nice from my perspective if that inherently did get rid of Tencent as an entity and got rid of the Chinese influence that was happening in the video game world by effectively saying, well, this is a forbidden company like so many like terrorist organizations that the United States companies can't do business with. That doesn't really mean much, because I'm sure they just money launder one way or the other. I don't have a clue what that really does as far as Tencent having major stock share percentages in US companies. Like, do those shares get seized by the US government and do they get sold off, or do those shares still are they still owned by Tencent but they can't do anything with them? And they can't get dividends off of them, which would mean that they're basically useless. So yeah, I don't know how this really is going to play out. There's major problems in the United States with executive orders in general, and their expanded powers in the Congress and House of Representatives really failing to do their own job and letting a lot of things be done by executive order. Here's this game, Anno Mutation. Seems like it is a 2.5D platforming game with several different perspectives. So this kind of feels like a tech demo right now. But clearly the concept of running will play a role, running and jumping, and then some hack and slashing with swords and some shooting with guns. And so that's probably what the real art of it is. And then I don't know if there's like a virtual reality different world here, or a flashback sequence where you have a kind of helpless girl who's like crawling and walking through big pillars. So yeah, you have two separate worlds and stories being told. That doesn't look terrible for the beginning concept of a game. It really will just come down to how much polish really goes into it. Yeah, but yeah, to get back to that, if Tencent was gone, if a lot of Chinese influence was just forbidden and outside of the reach of US companies, I'd be fairly happy. But I'm not sure that that's really what is going to happen. Like, elections just around the corner, everything could be undone. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump is not reelected, that there is kind of a very active attempt to undo everything Trump did, in the same way that Trump had a very active attempt to undo everything Obama did. And that seems to be fairly common. I've heard rumors that seem to be true from my own personal experience that aluminum has been very scarce in the United States, and thus the less popular soda drinks have become impossible to get, and I definitely have noticed that. And Trump, by executive action again, just put a tariff on Canadian aluminum, and the speculation there is that that's because he's trying to secretly force people in the United States and companies in the United States to buy Russian aluminum, which that is kind of the accusation that gets thrown out a lot of times, that he's trying to benefit the Russians, and there definitely are a lot of instances where it seems like that is the outcome, whether it was intended or not.
How much is in it for me? You were done for.
Moving on back to video games, though, we have a Komatsu article. Last Labyrinth PlayStation VR Physical Edition launches November 26th in Japan. Last Labyrinth is the game where you are in VR, kind of strapped to a wheelchair, and it's an escape the room game where you're commanding this green-haired anime girl, who I suspect might be a ghost. Otherwise, she's just really, really dumb, and the fact that she needs to be told what to do, or she's blind, and they haven't revealed that part. I guess at some point there is a danger where I'm going to call a character dumb, and it's going to turn out that they actually are written to have like mental deficiency. And that would be a whoopsie, I suppose.
Golly, it's chilly here.
4 damage to an enemy follower. Last Labyrinth definitely feels like it is a smaller game, though, so I'm not really expecting it to be more than like 5 or 6 hours.
I feel slushy.
And I will say, once again, take note that these games are going to be PlayStation 4 announcements, not what you would expect, which would be PlayStation 5 announcements.
You like the cold? You like the cold? You like the cold?
So next we have a game called Death Come True, launching October 15th, which has a Steam page. So let's check out the Steam page.
How much is in it for me?
Death Come True being the live action game that had some... I thought it had some review problems. Like, people didn't like it originally. But apparently they've gotten over that because it's mostly positive now. This is from kind of like a famous game developer, but it's his first live action, like, choose your own adventure visual novel experience. Alright. It's $15.99, apparently Japanese full audio, but they've put Japanese way at the bottom. Okay. It's from the creator of the Danganronpa series, Kazutaka Kadaka. So, I can put that on the wish list. It meets the requirements. What else do we want to do here? Snowman, Golem, Ward first. And then this. And then Evolve.
This match is mine. luminescence.
Take
And then
that.
hit,
No!
You like the
hit,
cold?
Shining
and hit.
hope.
And then return.
My lord.
So that really is an example of a PC full motion video game then being ported to the PS4. So they are definitely going in a different direction than the ways they've gone before. Alright. If I play this, it'd be a 7-7. Which is smarter than playing that.
How much is in it for me?
I could evolve that and do 1 more damage. I don't need to. Gametsu has an article here. Dragon Quest Rivals Ace launches August 13th in Japan. It's going to be a free-to-play digital card game rebranded for PC, smartphone, and Switch. Which there's a slight argument if this was translated to English that this would be something to jump away from Shadowverse to something newer. But you do kind of have the problem of Dragon Quest never getting quite enough foothold in the West for it to make sense. Also, this looks like it's a fairly different and complicated card collectible game. It's got a lot of animations, trying to be fairly kid-friendly, I would guess. And I'm not sure that really works for a collectible card game. Yeah. I've not seen a lot of examples of kids being hyper into collectible card games. Like, other than Pokemon. And that's because they were hyper into Pokemon. So even people that played the Pokemon collectible card game, I feel like still probably only played the card game once in a while and played the like Game Boy Pokemon games more often. It's gonna be ridiculous if it turns out that I get more score through this process of playing unlimited than I do playing ranked. But that might be the case, frankly. It might be that all the bad players, all the new players are playing unlimited and all the good players are staying on ranked. Yep. I would still say that
Is fighting and despair all you know?
that there is definitely a better case to wait for the second dinner Marvel card game and play that as soon as it comes out in beta or whenever you can start playing it versus playing a Dragon Quest brand new game, because Marvel has much more of a Western appeal and I think much more of a worldwide appeal. I have no idea how popular Dragon Quest really is in Europe or Australia or South America or Africa or like any of the Western Asian countries of Russia and China. TechRaptor has an article. New executive order puts President Trump puts Tencent. Is it spelled that way? Tencent in the crosshair. So WeChat is now banned. We had just talked about that. Let's see. He also has one, I think, banning TikTok. And see, TechRaptor says, simply put, major gaming companies and other multimedia companies may be affected by the executive order. To what extent is speculation at this point. You're still likely to be able to play League of Legends. Let's see. Tencent has majority or minority holdings in multiple developers and publishers, including Riot Games, Epic Games, Activision Blizzard, Platinum Games, Paradox Interactive. They also have ownership or minority stakes in non-gaming properties franchises, including Discord, Reddit, Lyft, Spotify, Warner Music, as well as the production of movies such as Wonder Woman and Terminator Dark Fate and more, which Warner Music is awful, certainly, and Reddit's fairly bad. So yeah, if Tencent just lost all of its shares and all of its ownership, if the government actually, if the US government actually just seized all that ownership, or that would be a lot of Chinese influence, with the assumption being Tencent being really under direct control of the Chinese government, removed for the better, in my opinion. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it really just boils down to they have to sell off their shares, which them selling off their shares right now might lose them quite a lot of money. But that would be a more middle ground solution instead of it just being seized by the government. Or it very well may just be a case that they don't have to sell off their shares at all, they just can't invest anymore. TechRaptor says Tencent will likely no longer invest in American companies or products, a practice they have been doing for the past few years to steadily grow the size they are now. And the only reason they've been able to invest is because they've been given, basically straight up given cash through market manipulation and like just Chinese government printing money. Like a out of the blue nowhere company shouldn't have the cash to be investing into other companies. They'll continue to buy European companies, so what you'd really want to see is Europe follow suit, and I doubt Europe is going to want to do that. Wechat is going to be banned in the United States, apparently, or at least theoretically. Let's see. The worst case scenario is the vagueness in language opens the door for other companies owned by Tencent to see bans. Transactions between US customers and games like League of Legends can be at risk due to developer Riot Games being a subsidiary of Tencent. The same can apply to majority stake developers like Supercell and games like Clash of Clans and Brawl Stars. Honestly, if all of those games were actually banned in the United States, a lot of people would be upset, but the state of the video game industry would probably be a lot better. And even a little pain to Ubisoft and Epic Games sounds just. But this certainly is also going to piss off a lot of young people if all of a sudden they can't play PUBG or Fortnite. So there's definitely some increased risk with all of this. In a lot of ways, you could easily spin these actions, instead of being protectionism for the United States companies, which is what I would classify it as. You could easily spin this as just Trump being out of touch with the youth and hating kids, and I could see a lot of upset kids pushing their parents to potentially be upset and vote against him, although those would be fairly swing parents, and I wouldn't be surprised that if you wouldn't have just as many parents saying, finally somebody has done something to get my kids to stop playing PUBG and Fortnite. But yeah, Tencent's article, TechRaptor's article here is pretty much as nebulous as I thought it was going to be. Like, that is pretty much where I figured. This is all going to just end up in courts and very possibly be a moot point before it even gets out of court. it would have been a much more decisive and strong decision had it been a bill actually passed by Congress. And made into an actual law. Here we have a game on Steam called Kozu Strange Journey, which looks like it's a maybe RPG Maker game with, yeah, mostly top-down figures. The trailer video here shows some animation that I just don't think you're going to see too much of. And then you just have like two anime girls. Then $13.49, English, Chinese, and Japanese. I would lean towards thinking this might be Chinese more than Japanese. But regardless, it does just look like a RPG Maker game. So there's nothing special there. Do to that. Can't because
I earned my fair share.
My king.
the way that works. So we have to play that instead. This one's immune to, can't be targeted by effects or spells. Next we have a game on Steam called Architectus, which they're saying is a sandbox game about building. To me it looks like it's probably an asset flip game. Like, if you were really gonna try and have a 3D modeling, like 3D decorating software, there's actually a lot of already existing very expensive software out there that does that. The good ones would be ones that export things out to a plotter printer file so that a large device called a plotter can print it out in blueprints so that then people who are actually building the house or decorating the house know what they're doing. If you go through the history of like Bar Rescue episodes and probably a lot of remodel shows, you'll see a lot of these softwares get used and then they get abandoned and then the new software gets attempted because honestly it just takes too much time. It's not really worth it. It's never really that accurate. It's never that realistic. It is way easier in most cases if you're decorating to just have cardboard boxes or large flat pieces of paper to just like draw a chifforobe, if you were even going to do that. Like there's just not a super efficient way to do it. Now there's a slight difference if you're actually drawing the construction elements, because those have to be accurate. Those have to be filed with the city usually, and so then people will use software like AutoCAD is, I know, one of the ones that was used, at least back when I was taught how to use AutoCAD, and that was a pretty awful software because it was just super complicated and had a terrible AI user interface, UI. So looking at this and thinking of it like a game, it's kind of nothing. It kind of looks like an asset flip game. It sort of feels like House Flipper, but the thing that House Flipper did to at least somewhat address that issue is that House Flipper made several scenarios and added gameplay like mechanics and elements to it. I feel like House Flipper itself probably needed several more years of additions and tweaks, and the House Flipper 2 and the House Flipper 3 probably should come out at some point. To this character, this person is moving really slow, or my internet's moving really slow. One or the other. Like, I think House Flipper in itself, if cheap, is fine. I don't think the DLC is particularly great. if we go and actually look at House Flipper 2, you can see that there's a lot more detail and a lot more design and decoration that's being offered here. And they say these are ruined houses, and I guess it depends on what you really think of ruined houses. Typically when I hear the word ruined, I mean, it sounds to me like it's unfixable, whereas like I would call these severely neglected houses, not ruined houses.
Be gone.
Like a ruined house is a house that, in my mind, needs to be completely torn down.
Iron my fair
And actually, it's fairly rare that that's the scenario. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Scan Your Heart, which looks like a bumper car game where you're shooting guns and maybe using an umbrella as a shield. Seems to be some kind of multiplayer attempt at something. The idea is kind of interesting. Is this something that happens in bumper cars where you're given like little laser zappers? Because I feel like bumper cars tend to always kind of break down and have more crashes than the people running the bumper cars really want them to have. So having somebody not pay attention to their driving, particularly when you're letting kids drive the bumper cars, seems kind of silly. And then there's a weird level of like this happening inside a mall with advertisements all around, which doesn't make sense. It's VR for $3.99. It seems to be like it's probably a Chinese game. Maybe there is a mall out there that has something like this. I've never seen anything like that, though. I wouldn't say there are too many places where you can even do bumper cars. There's probably one or two in every large city, but you'd have to seek them out, and it is one of those activities where I imagine you think it's going to be fun a lot more than it actually is fun. And I imagine kids can have a good 3 or 4 hours of entertainment on something like that, and then they'll get bored. Seriously? Fine.
I am the guardian of the
If
sky.
you're gonna play that way,
It
we'll
won't be
play
long
that
now.
way.
John, don't. Don't.
Hit that. Hit that. Hit that. We're actually winning, which is nice.
I only did what I had to.
I got another 3 victories. And so, do I have another win 3 victories for daily missions? Nope. This restarts at 1 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Alright. So I have like no daily mission at all. But we're winning, so there's no reason not to keep on playing as we go through the news. But I guess once we're done with the news, we'll be done with today's stream. Here we have a game on Steam called The Infected. Looks like it's a survival game where you're running around the forest. That's probably an asset flip forest, although I will say it is very visually polished nice. And yeah. I guess my question here is there really a game here? Or is this just kind of the same survival type game we've seen 100 times before? I have to say this probably is just another survival game like we've seen before. Early access $13.99, English full audio allegedly. I'm not going to put this on the follow list, but I will leave it open to the idea that maybe this actually is fairly a good game, and people might play it, although I doubt it. Like, I wonder if we're gonna see kind of a significant decrease in zombie games in general, because I don't know if people are gonna be in the mood to play zombie games. And by the way, I got all of the crossover rewards for daily logins, apparently. So no more Code Geass rewards for that. Some animated versions of the basic cards. And another pack reward. Now we should have another entry, free entry in this. And yeah, I'm gonna just hope that my win streak somehow magically transfers over to this. This is definitely the Code Geass symbol. And this probably is Code Geass music. I don't think this background actually is a Code Geass background though. I think they're hiding the fact that they're reusing it. So right now we're in stage 1. If I got 4 wins, I'd be left in Group A. Odds of that are fairly low. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here. Dragon Mark for Death version 3.1.0 is update is now available, which I must have heard of this game, but honestly I cannot recall it at all. That is very weird. Very weird that, but that definitely does happen. There's just so many games that get talked about.
A dazzling victory awaits.
Maybe this isn't on PC, because this does kind of seem like a almost Game Gear style game, like a mobile game, I guess is what you would call it now. It does seem like it's a beat 'em up game. What is this for? PC, PS4, and Switch. So this is my pre-built deck. By the way, remember that is unlikely to be successful. So this game is on Steam. It was on my following list. We see that it has enough positive reviews. I don't see a reason why this doesn't get moved up to the wish list. It would be nice if all games just kind of eventually got moved up to the wish list. Although this price at $39.99 is particularly high. Be nice if all games made it to the wish list that way and you didn't have to do wish list follow-ups and cleanups. But that's just never gonna happen.
Clean your wings with prayer.
There will always be a large percentage of games that never get mentioned again. Speaking of things getting mentioned again, Gamatsu seems to have major problems with updating their sales lists accurately when they publish. So several times now we've seen them list the top 10 sales in units, and then they come back and update it for the 11th through the 30th. I'm just gonna mention that and not actually go through any of the games. Honestly, even talking about the top 10 game sales in Japan is fairly pointless. yeah, I don't think there's really a need to do that. Next we have a game on Steam called Shooty Skies Overdrive, which this is one of those games where they use green screen to make it look like, make the trailer look completely different from what the game actually looks like. So you're shooting things, standing in one place shooting things, like so many other video VR games. Seems like you also have a shield, and it seems like they're going for a blocky voxel type look for $9.99, English only. Suppose if this looks interesting to you, check it out. To me it seems fairly generic. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Mahjong Nagomi from Zoo Corporation, which is the developer of the Koi Koi Hanafudo game that I recently played. And it wasn't a terrible game by any means, although I will say they were kind of expensive on the Koi Koi game in that they threw in some DLC for the main story that would have doubled or tripled the price. It's rated mostly positive now. I have been looking for a true Mahjong game, and the Zoo games in particular seem to not go very heavy into the anime girls aspect here. You may take note that, yeah, you're not really seeing any anime girls. You're not. It's not being sold as, oh, they lose their clothing as you play Mahjong. There's no sexual content or adult content mentioned here at all. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just put that on the wish list. $4.24 is not bad right now. But yeah, they may add some DLC. See, this was the one I was just playing before, and that came out in 2015. And there are a couple of versions of games that they have put out that have been more adult, like Pretty Girl Mahjong Solitaire, for instance, and Bashoujo Battle Hanafudo Koi Koi. So they seem to be kind of half and half. And you can definitely see that a lot of their older stuff is not particularly well received, so it does kind of feel like maybe they have turned over a new leaf and they're now focusing on making the games good instead of just trying to be a low effort content creator. Unfortunately, that does open up a door to a logical argument that I definitely don't want to have to admit could possibly exist, in the fact that there is that small possibility that any low effort game developer and publisher on Steam might at some point improve and become an actual game developer and actually good. Now arguably also any AAA game developer could poop out a terrible low effort asset flip game, although that would hurt their branding and their names quite a bit. And I suppose it would just eventually boil down to if Valve is going to be if Valve is going to be the curator of games based on content, then it just needs to be a curator based on the content of each individual games. This is Tut Kahamun. I hadn't realized that was how that was going to be pronounced.
This power is for everyone.
Shutting down.
I shouldn't have evolved this. Instead, I should have just attacked that guy. But then I wouldn't have been able to attack that guy, so... yeah. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Tim is adding PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X version and dropping the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions, which Tim seems to be the only company that's really gone in that direction. Lately, Tim is the Pokemon game that requires you to play online, I believe, so that... well, it does say it has a story campaign. I don't think you can really play it single player offline the whole time.
Shutting down.
Let's see. Here we have a Gamatsu article. The anime-inspired beat-em-up Aeon Must Die launches 2021 for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Update 2. This was one of the games shown at the PlayStation event where they were highlighting a bunch of games for the PlayStation 4. There definitely is something questionable about the way they've decided to promote PlayStation 4 games, because it seems like if E3 had happened, they would have put the PlayStation 4 games forward first, so people kind of heard about them, got hyped about them, and then forgot about them. And then after that point, they would have started trying to hype at that point they feel like they should have been hyping the new games for the PlayStation 5. So it does kind of feel like they're going backwards and forwards now in a weird direction and weird way. That would only make sense if they were backing away from the idea of releasing the PlayStation 5. And it certainly would be weird if there was a 6 months difference between the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 coming out. I feel like we've had that in the past though, in the opposite direction. I feel like the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, I think that came out 6 months to a year after the PlayStation 2 or the PlayStation 3 came out, and it did allow a lot of people on the PlayStation side to become locked into the PlayStation. And I don't think PlayStation should let that happen if they want to succeed. Speaking of wanting to succeed, some of these sleeves for cards, like, you don't get to see them unless you own them yourself, really. You can kind of just see them now, and that's about it. You can't get them in full screen, and you can't figure out what they even are half the time. So that's one loss, and I suspect we'll have a full 5 losses in a row. Next we have a game on Steam called Fox Simulator. I feel like there's already 2 games called Shelter and Shelter 2 where you kind of play as a fox, so it would be a hard sale to play yet another game where you play as a small creature. Maybe you don't play as a fox in either of those games, but you play something kind of like a fox. And this does feel like it's a mostly empty world, so I don't know how much actual story or interaction there is in a game like that. $7.19 discounted. numbers for the achievements, bunch of languages. That does kind of make it feel like it's potentially a low effort asset flip game. The Control DLC AWE, new trailer narrated by the Alan Wake actor. AWE as an Alan Wake event or Altered World event, I think is what it really will be. Control, once again, to me feels like a game that was just hyper hyped by mainstream video game journalists and then immediately forgotten once it came out, and I really don't see a natural organic fan base of people who are still playing Control or really like Control. It's gonna be interesting, I suppose, to see if people go back and try and play the DLC and see if the DLC does something particularly different. But I bet a lot of people don't bother. In a funny way, this is also what happened with The Witcher 3. Whereas I think there was a fairly high natural organic fan base for The Witcher 3, there was kind of considerable less enthusiasm for the Blood and Wine DLC, and basically an unsustainable small amount of enthusiasm for Gwent as a spin-off. So do I want to do something here? During your turn, when defense is restored to your leader, if it's the second time this turn, I don't think that's what we want to do yet. So yeah, I would like to be proven wrong, I guess, a little bit on Control, but I don't think I am. I bet we see very few people go back and try and play it, and very little enthusiasm about new DLC. In particular, I couldn't imagine myself going back and playing it because I didn't even play all of the main game. So there's basically no justification in my mind for that. Let's see. Well, this could do 2 damage to somebody.
My blade is your salvation.
Or 4 damage to somebody. Let's see. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Fast and Furious Crossroads, which, honestly, looking at the video playing, they seem not to be actually playing on Crossroads, or roads at all. This game so far is rated mostly negative. It's for $59.99, and it's come out with absolutely no fanfare. Literally the worst PC game I've ever played. Zero optimization and controls reported to PC, zero ability to change keybinds or even see the actual keyboard keys are relative to the in-game heads-up display. No keyboard controls, only controller bindings, no options to switch. PC game doesn't have a keyboard setting. Yeah, and for racing games where you might have a programmable steering wheel that doesn't show up as a controller, that could be a problem. I'm going to stick this on the following list to see if maybe it gets improved, but the fact that this was put out with no fanfare and it's being published by Bandai Namco and Slightly Mad Studios has published a lot of Project Cars games, and most of those are positive. Does kind of make it feel like this game is not well cared for. Let's see. What do we want to do? This. And then this. Then end the turn, I guess. Okay. So yeah, the state of play happened. There was a Godfall combat overview. It's not really worth mentioning, frankly. Like, it's a sword looter grinder from Gearbox, which like has not a huge chance in my mind of being successful.
My armor has been pierced.
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
See, do we have anything else we can do?
Winds of light, show your might. Eating makes me hungry.
Giving
My tummy's
Gourmet.
rumbling.
Didn't even know I had a card like that. What else? Focus Home Interactive and Sumo Digital announced Hood Outlaws and Legends, which is, I think, kind of a group-based Robin Hood story thief gameplay-like game would be my best guess. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it was something closer to like Rainbow Six Siege 6 and like a group-based multiplayer game. The Pedestrian is coming to PS4 in January of 2021, which we've seen a lot of that. Auto Chess is coming to PS4 on October 31st. Control DLC comes on August 27th. Vader Immortal for PlayStation VR is coming August 25th. There was another trailer for Bug Snacks. There's a trailer for Anno Multinia, which we talked about. There was the Aeon Must Die launching 2021 for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PC. Genshin Impact was shown for the PS4, and Giant Bomb people, as they were watching this, did not even give it 5 seconds of attention,
Are you the enemy
which
I
is
seek?
their kind of standard. This is how we're going to deal with anything that even remotely looks anime or Japanese, is we're just going to make fun of it and then ignore it.
I will save you no matter the cost.
Which is really a just condemnation on their editorial team. There should be at least one person on their team that they can talk to a game like that and say, this is what this game is, this is why it's important. Instead, what Giant Bomb mostly was obsessed with was Spelunky 2, which does look like it is an improvement to Spelunky 1, which is an improvement, I think, of the like Flash Spelunky game. But it still looks like Spelunky, and I don't think I'm gonna play Spelunky 2. I don't think the actual gamers, the vast majority of actual gamers, are gonna play Spelunky 2. But I bet the Giant Bomb crew is gonna be obsessed with it like they were with the first game. Regardless, it comes out September 15th on the PS4 and shortly after on PC. I guess it is worth mentioning and keeping an eye out for which of these games come out for the PS4 first versus the PC first, because we're starting to see a little bit different. A game called The Pathless, where you play as a like archer with a hunting hawk in kind of a magical world, was shown some gameplay and it looked interesting. There was there was a teaser for Braid Anniversary Edition for the PS5, Xbox Series X, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Which inherently this brings out an interesting question, considering how Braid was one of the games that literally would content ID claim. I don't think they actually copyright struck my channel, but they content ID claimed like everything, to the point where I deleted my footage of playing Braid. I may have even played Braid once or twice, and they just didn't believe in fair use. So that puts you in this weird position as a video game critic and a content creator. That is the one thing, the abuse of copyright is the one thing that gets you blacklisted. So, like, it would be naive for me to think, well, the jerk creator of Braid, who I don't think has stopped being a jerk, and I think there were definitely stories saying he was kind of a jerk, has changed his attitude and realized that he should let people cover his game and critique it, and he should respect fair use. And even if he has had a change of heart, I don't know if there's any reason why I would give him a second chance and go back and play Braid. As for the actual game, the Anniversary Edition has been like improved in its graphics, repainted, redrawn, and I wonder if perhaps a completely different team is actually now in charge of it. I have no idea who this character is, though. She definitely caught my attention with a lot of red hair. That is one of the best things about Shadowverse. It's a small thing, but the fact that you can see characters, players with sleeves that they actually care about and leader skins that they actually care about is great. Compare that to Magic the Gathering Arena, where there was just this long list of heroes you could play as, and they all looked so generic and so boring. There's not really any difference between playing as one as the other. Like, I would just occasionally purchase one if it was on sale, like a new leader skin with a non-real world money currency. But even when I would get one on sale and equip it, I'd immediately forget that it was equipped and that it was different. So let's see. Next, Hitman 3 will be playable entirely in PlayStation VR, which feels like that's something you could have always done, and it will probably be fairly janky. The big proof will be in the pudding there, and if it turns out to be an amazingly well designed interface in game for that kind of for PlayStation VR, that will be very interesting, and it might even convince people like me that VR is more than just a fad for rich people. Crash Bandicoot 4 has new playstyles, a playable character, and skins announced. Also, some of the levels are going to have like different alternate art, negative versions of the levels, flipped versions of the levels to let people do more. Still not 100% sure that I ever would want to play Crash Bandicoot, but the trailer for it did play off fairly impressively, or I could kind of see myself playing it if it came to PC, which it won't.
May you all be blessed.
And that's pretty much all the announcements from what I remember, and that's all that Gamatsu has. And yeah, almost all of those were focused around PlayStation 4 versions, even if they have a chance of being PlayStation 5, having PlayStation 5 versions too. Alright, what does this do? 3 damage.
Sure has a nasty.
salvation.
Come meet my God, as God wills.
Salvation surely awaits.
I will say Shadowverse does seem to like to talk about gods and God a little bit more than
Worried like that?
I would prefer. It's a dangerous topic of conversation to have. Like I could see a like real middle ground Christian parent letting their kid play Shadowverse and then walk in the room and hear a character talk about God and then being concerned about that and then banning them from playing the game. You're probably we're never going to win over the hyper religious conservative parents, but
This is not the end.
you may lose some of the middle ground moderates. Let's see, is that loss number 3 or 4? Yep, that was number 3. Here's more info for Vader Immortal, where I think you play as Darth Vader in VR. It's kind of nice to see that Lucasfilms, in name at least, seems like they're doing something. But this also feel very, very gimmicky. Yeah.
A dazzling victory awaits.
Let's see. It also, the way this is described as all 3 episodes makes me think that Vader Immortal originally was sold episodically and now they're reselling it with PlayStation VR support, so I don't know if perhaps it was on PC first or what. I don't think there's a lot to say about the Pedestrian as a platforming like puzzle game. It has an interesting visuals, but I think it probably is about 5 to 6 points of story, and then that's about it. I don't see people playing that for like 20 hours. And always it's a simplistic enough game that you would expect it to really be on cell phones more than the PlayStation 4. And I don't know if we are hitting a point where a lot of games, frankly, should be on cell phones instead of consoles, and that's a issue. I saw in a Reddit post, I don't think I have the article open, where a publisher developer was talking about how he literally can't get any unit sales on the Nintendo eShop, which I kind of could believe that, certainly. Like, Nintendo has just made that the Wild West to the point where I don't think a random third-party publisher has a good chance of actually making money from the Nintendo eShop.
It's so fluffy.
Punishment. Repent.
They're about to wreck my strategy. Let's see. Yeah. We already talked about auto chess. I don't think I'm ever going to get to the point where I play auto chess, so I'm not super interested in knowing much more about it than that. Here is probably the most interesting game, but it will be coming to Steam too, so like the interesting AAA games, of course, are likely to come to PC. There's a danger here, though, that this is just yet another game where it's going to be swords and shields, but the teaser trailer here does kind of seem like it's more of a stealth game where you're murdering people brutally and not so much of a head-on honorable duel style game. To defense to your leader.
Sugar's the best cure for the blues, you know.
Draw another card. And play this. Do I want to?
My blade is your salvation. I believe the sweet now don't push.
There we go.
Breach of contract, huh?
I feel like Focus Home Entertainment also was the developers of the Styx series, so that they may have some expertise in a stealth style game. But as I'm looking here, it says outplay rival gangs in player versus enemy multiplayer heists. So it seems like there won't actually be any single player content here for Outlaws and Legends, which means I've just immediately lost interest the second I actually knew what the game was. Coincidentally, Robin Hood Winds of Freedom, which is a city management style game, is on Steam for $5.59. Not really a game that needs to be on the follow list, of course. Yeah, nothing wants to load now. I feel like I'm having fairly bad internet today. My internet was having trouble certainly yesterday, and it turned out that like the app had crashed on the router and something about the way it reloads is not quite right.
I soar the skies in the name
But
of
I'm not sure I
justice.
believe that that's what's happening here in this case. I think that
Circles and circles.
people in general might just be having internet troubles.
Wings of light, show your might. My power is weak. Time to dance. I lost.
Only while you can.
Punishment.
Yeah, I think we already talked about this, but TechRaptor has an article that Tim is coming to PlayStation 5, which, honestly, the idea of a Pokemon game coming to PlayStation 5 is really evidence and a reminder that Sony failed to have a Pokemon competitor come out back when the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 was the main consoles. So yeah, I don't know if it isn't really just too little too late. Twitch had another issue where it was stopping people from completing the tax interview for the creator onboarding steps, which that's a weird one. Certainly you don't see that, and that definitely is a great example of something that probably did not need to be mentioned publicly on their Twitter feed, even if it is Twitch support. There was allegations made, and I don't know if these are fully credible allegations, but let me just get to the response here from this. Allegations were made right after the Outlaws trailer came out that that entire trailer was made by a team that was unpaid or underpaid and I think fired after the fact. So like just major complaints and allegations right after your trailer happened, which really goes to show the there's really bad business in firing employees or right as you're trying to get positive hype, and I think we'll start seeing more and more of this happen where if employees are abused or laid off as soon as the project is done, then we will see a wave of bad press follow any potential wave of good press. Focus Home Interactive here has a response that seems to be mostly saying that they're investigating it, but it's not really their fault because it's actually Limestone, their direct employer, so they're throwing out under the bus a third-party company. Of course, inherently, this is always what late-stage capitalism does, is they just always have some contractor contract out to another contractor, so there's no accountability anywhere. This is how bureaucracy and corruption works. At the end of the day, Focus Home Interactive was the main client for making the game, and they needed to make sure that they were doing business with good, trustworthy companies. Otherwise, they are just as guilty. There is no excuse for individuals. If you go and do business with someone that you think might be a drug dealer, and it turns out that they're a drug dealer, then you've done business with a drug dealer, and you might get arrested for dealing, having drug money on you yourself. And yet, they say corporations are people, and yet they can get away with doing the exact same thing on a massive scale and not have any consequences. So the argument from corporations really isn't that corporations are people. It's the argument that corporations are people who are better and entitled to more rights and freedoms than actual human beings. But that is based on Aeon Must Die, actually, not the Outlaws game. I got that story right. Got that wrong. So I would say the Sony State of Play also was a little weird in that there was no presenter, and it really was just a trailer and a voice narrator for the entirety of the show, which does kind of inherently show that they don't have either the Sony in California that's now in charge or Sony of Japan. Neither one of them have designated somebody to be in charge and someone to be the face and the spokesman of Sony Interactive Entertainment, which that's a problem. Can this get Ward? Let's see.
My blade is your salvation.
Don't need to talk about that again. Don't need to talk about that again. Gamma Sutra has an article here that's kind of a blog, how Teamfight Tactics was designed to target former League of Legends players. I guess if you're interested in Teamfight Tactics or League of Legends, that might interest you. But since I'm not interested in either game, I have no desire to go through it. Gamatsu has the Genshin Impact for the PS4, launches this fall. And this is the one game that we haven't really talked about or shown, so I feel like it should be put off. It's very bright and colorful in an anime style that seems like a slightly more grown-up Ni no Kuni type experience. Seems to be a fairly open field RPG experience with also some attacks affecting the world, and being able to potentially climb walls is an interesting idea. I feel like I've seen the word Genshin Impact before, but there's like no subtitle to this either. And in all fairness, Genshin Impact might just be kind of a generic JRPG, bright and colorful, and it might not have any kind of amazing story, or it might be like a slightly easier experience compared to playing Monster Quest, Monster Hunter, not Monster Quest. I think there was a game called Monster Quest, but that was like a long time ago. So I wouldn't want to underhype or overhype Genshin Impact, but I would want to mention it and not do like Giant Bomb and just talk about Spelunky 2 throughout the entire presentation of it. And in all fairness, I guess that is in part the fault of Sony, or perhaps directly the plan of Sony to have people uninterested in Spelunky 2 then be able to talk about Genshin Impact, and people uninterested in Genshin Impact be able to talk about Spelunky 2, because I bet there isn't a ton of overlap in that fandom.
Heaven may abandon you, but I will not.
Okay. Let's see.
Food tastes best when you're hungry.
There we go.
Wings of light, show your might.
Don't resist. This power is for everyone.
Let's see. Here's the game Pathless, which we didn't show off any of that either, so like, people overreacting for the fact that there's an animation where you rub the dust off of the hawk and effectively pet the hawk, when more, I would say this feels like this is going to be a archery platforming game that's going to be fairly fast-paced in your movement, and kind of feels like it's going to be a lot of Shadow of the Colossus, with a few rooms that are going to be like Breath of the Wild. But I don't know if you're going to have like a cooking mini game. I don't know if you're going to run into as many random enemies, or any random enemies other than the big enemies. And when you get into these big boss fights, you're gonna have kind of like a stealth section where you're separated from your hawk, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's like only like 12 scripted fights like Shadow of the Colossus against these creatures. And that will be that. There's puzzles of some sort in the world, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the world in its totality is a little bit smaller than you think it would be. And the rest of the, I wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the game is kind of shorter than you would think it would be.
My tummy's rumbling.
I
will save you no matter the cost.
Let's see. We don't need to talk about that again. Here's the Braid Anniversary Edition. Like, honestly, I don't even think I can show the trailer at all. Because I wouldn't be surprised if kind of the jerk who was in charge of Braid claims the trailer is copyrightable, even though you literally cannot copyright ad copy. In what may be one of the very first instances of striking in the video game industry actually succeeding, and it is really a great testament to actually forming something like a union and having collective bargaining happen, versus so many of these organizations that don't want to actually be unions. Instead, they want to be kind of these activist groups that actually don't have any authority, to the point where I think half of these activist groups may very well have been promoted and created by the game developing management themselves as to be counter unions and to kind of like union bust before there even is a union. Well, regardless, TechRaptor has this article. The Love-Struck writers have secured a 66% pay raise after striking, which is quite a lot, frankly, in the United States, where you often won't even get a 10% pay raise, and if you adjust a 10% pay raise for the cost of living or the inflation amount, often that is not, it doesn't actually even benefit you anything, because the cost of living has gone up more than 10%. There is also certainly a case here that probably the management that was underpaying them in the first place and that gave in to give them pay raises are now going to look very hard to try and lay off these people and hire cheaper employees. That is interesting. Also, they succeeded after 21 days, whereas most negotiations with unions and collective bargaining negotiations go on for a very, very long time, and the management often is just dragging their feet. I would say it's mostly the management there. It's kind of rarely that the union themselves are dragging their feet in the process. They want to claim success and claim success early if they can. I don't think we really have anything more I want to do. Like, I could play some more games in multiplayer, but I am in this weird position right now where there's kind of no reason to do that. Like, for the first time since I've started playing, yeah, I don't have a daily mission, so there's no reason to play unranked or ranked. I have to wait until 2 hours have happened until any of the mission starts. The only thing I could potentially do, I sent out a request to join a guild and it wasn't accepted, which I was hoping to potentially see what joining a guild actually did. The only thing I could think of doing would be going to the main story here and trying to get all of these scripted games and challenges done so that they're cleared. All that would reward me with would be a few hundred more gold. Probably going to get up to 5,000 or 6,000 gold, and then that probably at that point will be the last main ability to have any gold, which means the next expansion of cards I'll probably be able to open 15 packs, and then the expansion after that, unless they add a whole bunch of rewards, I probably won't have enough gold to open more than 20 or 30 packs. Speaking of packs, I should open a pack while we're here. TechRaptor has a article here. Infantry online community asks Daybreak for helping keeping the classic alive. So apparently the hardcore fans of Infantry Online want to keep the game alive. I've never heard of this game, but it clearly has a fan base. Let's see. You still basically get one card pack every single day. At least one card pack. Which is way better than Magic Arena or Hearthstone ever had. We have a game here on Steam called Gripper Prologue, which is probably a demo for a game. It looks like it might be an interesting game. It's free to play because it is just a demo. English full audio. Yeah, but I'm not going to be playing demos. I did learn something that kind of makes this weird. Because the way cards are depicted, it doesn't have to do with whether there's a fancy border here. And it doesn't have anything to do with the gems. The gems mean whether it's a forest craft or a portal craft or a neutral card. So for instance, this is a neutral card because it has a white gem. This is a blood craft because it has a red gem. The color is the thing that indicates the rarity. So this is a bronze, this is a bronze, this is a bronze, and this is a bronze. And you would think, well, okay, well then this must be like a platinum. The silver here must be the best ever. Nope, these are silvers. The second rarest cards here. And this is also, I believe, a silver. And this is a gold. And you just are so incredibly rare to get the platinums, which have kind of a rainbow effect on them, that you barely ever see them. Regardless, yeah, here we have a Bloodcraft card, Dark Summons. I'm sure we have 3 of those. I have like 12 of one card. This is a Havencraft for white. I was wrong about that. And I probably only have 1 copy of this, if that much. This is put Lorraine's Holy Water in your hand during your turn when defense is restored to your leader. If it's the second time, gain the ability to evolve for 0 evolution points. This art style also makes it seem like there's supposed to be a card inside of this card. Which, honestly, if there was a paper version of Shadowverse, I kind of would expect it to work that way. Where there was kind of like a sleeved or clear plastic sleeve that has the attack and health and mana cost. And then you pull out the inside part to see the art, and then on the back you see the description of what it does and the character text. Lorena's Holy Water restores 2 defense to an ally.
A prayer a day keeps the doctor away.
What's interesting is that's in English as a token from this card, so that token must have existed before. Because all of these cards right now, and I don't know if they ever actually will be translated to English, all the cards right now are in Japanese only. Let's see, we got another Ghostly Maid. We got another Spirit Curator. This may be the second copy of that we have, but I wouldn't be surprised if I have 3 of everything that is below a gold. You got 2 Curmudgeon Ogres. Same card twice. And we've got a Juggling Mogi, which we definitely had 3 of those. So, yeah, there's not a lot going on there. Speaking of not a lot going on, we have a low effort game here on Steam called Daily Wife, which is just like an asset flip character with some mini games and the anime. I guess maybe I'd even call her an anime woman instead of a girl, because she's actually drawn outside of the moe style. But it's just like a desktop pet. English was not supported. $3.69, Chinese only. Yep, another low effort Chinese game. Let's see, we've got about 5 more tabs. So let's get them all open and let's cover them, and then that'll be the end of the stream. Which, once again, the streams are saving me about 20 minutes every time. We're not running into 3 and 4 hour streams. Here we have a game called Warriors of the Nile, which seems like a kind of unique art style in this trailer. I don't know if that's really what the game is going to look like. Seems like it's a tactical turn-based placement game set in Egypt, and I have wanted to see more Egyptian style games. It's rated very positively. It's labeled as a roguelike. I'm going to put it on the fall list. It's $11.69, English, Chinese, and Japanese. Which looks interesting. Interesting enough. It might be, since it seems like there's 3 characters, that it might be that there isn't a lot here. So this might be like a 10-hour experience of solving puzzles or doing turn-based levels, and then that would be pretty much it. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him to not have a lot of holding power for that game. TechRaptor has an article. A new Halo Mega Construct set is the absolute unit. Microsoft and Halo had their Lego equivalent in Mega Constructs. I thought they probably would have given up on that at this point, considering how Nintendo now has like direct dealings with Lego, whereas Nintendo previously had a contract through Pokemon, I think, with the Mega Bloks construction bricks. I think it was Mega Bloks, and maybe the Pokemon company still has a contract with Mega Bloks. But if I was Microsoft, I would get out of the building block toy licensing business. Although maybe it just makes them money, so what do they care? Like, it doesn't really have to be quality, and the variety of toys probably are going to go down significantly in the next few years, so any money you can get probably is fine. I wouldn't be upset if the Microsoft Store online had a collection of several like figures and toys and t-shirts and things like that for a whole bunch of Microsoft owned properties, and they kind of were just in the business of selling swag directly, although that probably wouldn't make them a lot of money and probably wouldn't be worth the effort. Moving on, we have a game called Keepers of the Trees, which has a lot of background art from the looks of it. It might be a 3D platformer worth playing or not. It's free. Might also be a student project. Yeah, a free game that they're saying is a flagship product. I'll put it on the follow list, even though it's a free game. I guess the truth is, just go play it if it looks interesting. Do you? And it probably is just a couple hours of experience. They're calling it a couch co-op puzzle platformer. Doesn't look terrible, and the price is definitely right. Gamma Sutra has an article here, the Valve Trap of free-to-play design, which certainly there's a lot of stuff as far as free-to-play design that could be improved upon or that go too crazy. I'd say things like Arknights here are crazy in the fact that they have ridiculous amounts of YouTube ads with, on top of YouTube, just showing more ads in general to people, regardless of whether that's a smart idea or not. But also, I'd say a lot of the Arknight ads literally are deceptive in the fact that they're not really showing what the game is or anything close to the game. Once again, I'd say if you want a masterclass on how to do free-to-play right, play Destiny Child if you're of age, because they do it right. They really do treat their customers right, even though it is a free-to-play game where you literally could spend $1,000 a month easily without even having to work at it. Like, sure, you could go and just buy $1,000 worth of gems and premium currency, but there are monthly packages for $50, and there's probably 20 or 30 monthly packages for $50 that you could buy each month. Oh. Although, in all fairness, I don't know at a certain point if you need to do that, because you're going to just max out all of your characters after about a year of doing that anyways. They even put a thing in the store where you can get a reward box that usually you would have to pay real world money for, and they're selling it for gold. And I don't know if it's a glitch or if they've just decided to have something that you can buy for a really small amount of gold so that somebody can have the experience of buying something for the shop and going and looking at the shop on a daily basis. Next, we have a game on Steam here called A Night in Berlin, which looks like it's a really old game that might have had some fan base at some point. But if it's a brand new game, I don't know. It's free, and it says a single player. English full audio. The entire game is absolutely free forever. I don't think this game looks terrible. Just doesn't look good. If you told me this was a free PlayStation 2 game that had a niche following, I think there would be some relevancy to actually playing it, but currently in its form, I don't think there really is a reason for me to play it. So I'll just mention that it's free and it's out there. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. Zynga is going to acquire the prolific hyper-casual game studio Rollic for $168 million, if that interests you. We have a game on Steam here called RB Axolotl, which, let's see, seems to be kind of a visual novel with a bunch of like animal creatures and then a really creepy eyeball. It's tagged as a visual novel horror game, so they trick you into thinking it's a cutesy game, and then they throw the horror elements at you, which I think this is probably really just a low effort visual novel. It's $13.49. It's English full audio. They're mentioning VR, but it doesn't support VR. This really does just look like it's a kind of garbage game. So I'm not impressed by it. Borderlands has this official creator team where apparently streamers are allowed to stream, and they've added more people to that team, which, in all fairness, they do seem to do a very good job about keeping people interested in Borderlands 3 way more than most games, which lose their enthusiasm and their relevancy very quickly. TechRaptor has a article advertisement for Kink Incorporated from Nutaku, which I can't really show any of the content because I don't think it would be quite YouTube family friendly enough. Next we have a game on Steam called The Fairy Song. I think we will at some point. I'm gonna have to say, hey, I'm tired of talking about Nutaku games, which are fairly bad, and I would prefer to actually review and play some of the adult games on Steam, which have a smaller level, have a higher level of quality, or at least a higher chance of being quality games, if I'm gonna go down that route at all. Here we have a game called The Fairy Song, which is $8.99 as a visual novel, English and Chinese. But unlike a low-effort Chinese game, it does seem somewhat reasonable. Although you have some weirdness here that is kind of intriguing in the fact that this kind of looks like modern clothing, and this kind of looks like a cosplayer in armor, whereas this person actually looks like they might be a fairy. So, yeah. Seems like it might be set in the real world and in the modern time. So, yeah, there might be something there, but it might really be nothing also. And then we have an article here that's probably going to be way too inside baseball, but Gamma Sutra has a data-driven primer for publishing agreements, which certainly there is a lot you would need to know before signing or writing up a publishing agreement. Things like advances and revenue shares and who owns the IP, and will there be a sequel guaranteed to be made by the same team, how long the contract is going to last, how long the publisher is going to have the rights to publish that game, audit rights, I have no idea what that is, pricing, like the idea of auditing your publisher to make sure they're not cheating you out of money, though, seems like something that really should happen every time. Okay, and that brings me to the Humble Bundle store, and let's see if we have any new Humble Bundles. I don't think we do. Okay, and then that would bring us back to our Twitter feed. And I bet what happens this weekend is we have a fairly quiet weekend and not much happens. And yeah, I bet not a lot happens. And that may just be the way things go. Devolver Digital put out a Game of Thrones Tale of Crows game on Apple Arcade. I'm getting multiple things on Twitter for the exact same game. I don't know if that's Twitter's fault or because the game has been listed. There's kind of like an online QuakeCon, I think, that's kind of going on. Although I suspect not much is going to be announced. Or much would have been announced even at QuakeCon. Let's see. Keep on scrolling down. Yeah, there's just a lot of people talking about the announcements yesterday, which arguably I would say having the state of play on Thursday wasn't a smart move. They could have easily had it on Tuesday and had people talking about it a lot longer. I suppose people might still talk about it over the weekend, but by the time Monday or Tuesday happens, we'll start getting new news of something. Gamma Sutra has an article, 5 tips to make your loot better in your game. There's something along that line, which tip 1 through 5 should be don't have loot in your game, or don't have pay for loot in your game. It's fine to have regular loot in your game. That's just part of the game. Yeah, it does seem like there was kind of absolutely nothing that happened new. Alright, well, I guess that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.